Hello and welcome to a calm evening in my living room. So today we're going to give you some really practical, really quick tips on how to read a book analytically. And How to Read a Book is actually a brilliant book by Mortimer J. Adler, which I'll link you to in the description down below. And this is actually going to be a companion video for my Medium article on how to read a book, how to get the most out of a book. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Tip number one is that once you've purchased a book, once you have sort of got your hands on a good read, you want to make this book your own. So in a sense, if you've purchased this book is completely yours, and I don't care what other people say, and people tend to freak out a lot when they see me marking all over my book here. So this is actually a book called Malvani. It's actually a seminar by the philosopher Alain Badiou. So this is a really great read for me so far, and my book is currently destroyed. I've basically demolished this book with plastic flags and notes all over these pages. For those of you who are kind of like a little bit hesitant on, putting markings in the margins of your book, I want you to think of this entire marking process as sort of an exchange with the author. Because when you've purchased a book, when you decide to read this book, the idea that you're trying to get out of this book, it cannot happen without like a conversational exchange. And if you're a student of philosophy, you would have realized that the history of philosophy is just a whole bunch of conversations between philosophers. And if you're reading a non-fiction book of your choice, then you're basically engaging in a conversation with the author. So in a sense, when you're engaging in that sort of exchange, you want some sort of that transcript of that exchange. So this step number one, marking up the book, is going to serve as a transcript for you to converse with the author. So that's the right way to view it if you want to really mark up a book. For example, here, this page is absolutely demolished with my personal notes, and that's going to bring us to the second point, which is the process called signposting. So signposting is, in a sense, why I have so many crazy plastic flags sticking out of these books, and that's not the only one. So for the research for my previous video, Foucault's second volume of The History of Sexuality is also tabbed out of its mind. You don't just want to tab every single little thing. So hear me out. If a nonfiction book is structured in a very logical sequence, if it's structured in a way that's logical, then the author is trying to present to you arguments in the form of propositions. So propositions tend to fall under arguments, and your job as a reader is to pick out these propositions, to pick out what the chapter is arguing or what the chapter is trying to get at. And the first step to do this is to do a broad inspectional reading of the chapter. So once you have got your hands on a chapter, you want to go through the chapter really quickly and look out for the structure of the chapter. So where are the paragraph breaks? Are there lists? Are there bold headings? Are there subparagraphs? And you want to get a general sense of this entire structure of the chapter before you dive in and find propositions and arguments. Once you've done a really broad signposting, so to speak, once you've done a broad inspectional reading, then reread the chapter again and use plastic flags and use a pencil and to underline anything that stood out to you. And these are mainly arguments and points that you want to grab onto as the central structure of your reading. So for example, one chapter here, after inspectionally going through this chapter, I've realized that this entire chapter actually fell under three main arguments. So I numbered these arguments in a sense in 1, 2, 3. So these are going to serve as my anchor to sort of read the text, to sort of understand what a chapter is all about. And then once you've signposted that, once you've tabbed these signposts, once you've anchored yourself to these very central points of your reading, because what's going to happen is that the chapter could be filled with a lot of fillers. And the job of these signposts is to sort of group those fillers under these three main ideas so you don't get lost in a chapter. And after you've signposted this entire chapter, and after you've read through this entire chapter with your signposts, with your little plastic flags, I want you to flip open to the very back of the book. Usually there are some empty pages at the back of the book, so I want you to attempt to summarize the chapter with your little signposts. These are really brief notes. I encourage you to write these summaries in your own notes, and don't quote the author directly, because through forcing yourself to summarize the chapter in your own words, you're in a sense processing the chapter more analytically. So grab onto the signposts that you've tabbed using plastic flags, and then reread these signposts and attempt to sort of conjure up a summary at the very end of the book. These could look very elaborate, this could look very messy, and I even have diagrams here just to help me comprehend a chapter. And once you've done that entire summary, there's a pretty good chance that you've understood the chapter very, very lucidly. Now, the arguments in the chapter are going to stand out to you more prominently. And that's how you've basically digested a chapter really competently. And after you've done your summary, one last step, which is called the step of archiving. You need a system, because you're not going to carry this around with you all the time. It gets pretty cumbersome. It gets pretty annoying to have like 5 or 6 books in your bag, because my bag is currently falling apart because I carry around so many books. You want a little system for you, analog or on your computer. I personally use Notion and my personal notebooks to keep track of all these summary notes and signposts for my readings. So you can devise your own system and make sure it's practical. Make sure you don't run out of energy doing it. Make sure it's not a big time investment. It should be something that's quickly jotted down in sort of like a system that you can trust, so you can refer back to it all the time. Actually, for a lot of the research that I do for my longer form video essays, this is the process that I use. So I can harvest quotes and then citations and then page numbers from this archive that I have on Notion and the archiving system for my personal notebooks. So this is all around a very good system for you to use. Keep in mind that this is kind of like a companion video to the Medium post on how to get the most out of a book, and expect more of these little videos to pop up to give you very quick, practical tips recorded in my living room on reading, because outside of YouTube, I'm actually heading to postgrad next year, so the academic pressure, it is on. So to survive that sort of pressure, I need to gear myself up with all these reading skills, so it wouldn't hurt for me to share some of this with you guys in the future. Ending RC wanted here, a really short one today. Hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye and good night.